Welcome to the Romantasy Library.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Romantasy Library. My name is Kate Perkins, and today we get to interview T. Harlowe, who is a local author, which is amazing. I'm so excited and happy to be here with you, T.
Me too. Thanks for having me.
Getting to support you. So, I picked up your books from a neighborhood bookstore.
Yes.
The Pretty Posy.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I know. Every time I see the covers, I'm just like, my cover designer, Allison at Ozark Witch Illustrates, did just amazing.
Yes.
That is the cool thing about getting into local bookstores is you can sign the books and...
Which I had no idea when I purchased these. I didn't know that they were signed. And so it was such a happy surprise when I opened it up and like, boom.
That's amazing.
That's amazing.
I love it.
Yeah. So how are you this morning?
I'm good. I was not expecting a thunderstorm warning. Like, I thought it was finally sunny. I thought we were finally getting a good day. And then I look at my Alexa and it's like thunderstorm, severe thunderstorm warning until noon. And I'm like, what? Come on. I'm sick of the rain. April showers need to go away. It's May now.
I know. I know. Even though it's going to make everything green here. We're in the Midwest, guys, and it has been raining like crazy. This morning it hailed.
Yes.
It hailed here. Okay.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I'm tired of it.
It's
hard, especially because I have two young kids at home with me, and like all I want to do is go outside with them. Like that is the best thing I can do for my sanity and for theirs. And with all this rain, it's just impossible because it's so muddy and wet and the playgrounds are wet. Like just everything is soaked. So that's especially why I'm kind of just ready. I know I'll be changing my tune in like a couple months when it's insanely hot and muggy and I'm like, I'm just so sick of this. But
I know. I feel like it only lasts nice, I guess. That's not English, I don't think, but it's pretty nice for a little bit. And then come June for your birthday, it's going to be pretty hot. But
I know.
Our kiddo was so excited when it was hailing. She was like, Mommy, come see. And so my husband and I actually got out of bed and she was so excited for the hail.
My car is getting dented. Well, my car's in the garage, but my husband's truck was getting dented.
Yes. At our old house, we didn't have a garage, but at this house we do. So both of our cars are safe. And I was like, well, at least our cars are in.
Right.
Yeah. So, wondering if you could just start by giving us a brief overview. We'll be talking about some of your books, your background.
Right.
If you want to give a brief overview of these books, is that okay? Does that sound okay?
Yeah. So, Stolen Crowns is basically a fairy tale retelling series. It's interconnected, standalone. So like basically my idea for this was I wanted each book to have a different couple, similar to like how a lot of contemporary romances are done. Like I wanted a different couple and a different fairy tale retelling, but then there's kind of like an overarching plot that connects each of the books. So they don't necessarily you don't necessarily have to read book one in order to read book two. It can like help with the context of that overarching plot. But like, if you really just love this one fairy tale retelling and you want to read this book, like you can, and you can get the gist of like that couple's story. So yeah, that's basically it. It's a series of fairy tale retellings, about these different courts that have kind of been peaceful for a long time through like willful ignorance, and now a threat is starting to emerge, and all these different courts have to kind of come together and not only fight like the battles within their courts, but also like this looming threat that's kind of rising.
Yeah. I went ahead and read Ship of Shadows before reading Mirror Malice. I was in the mood for like a pirate vibe, and it did not disappoint. It was amazing. And as I was reading it, I was like, gosh, I really hope I didn't need to read the first book. But you absolutely don't have to.
Yeah.
I noticed, right? So like, here's the map.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming that each story kind of takes a different place at a different part of the map.
Yes. Yeah. So each story kind of focuses on a different court, even though like sometimes they go outside of the court, you know, like in Ship of Shadows, obviously they're on like a ship. They're not as much in the water court, but it is what it is.
It is what it is. I loved this book. It was a nice, like, it was a really fun read, really refreshing. I really, personally, I love stories that take place on the water and lots of travel stories where the characters are moving from one place to the next.
Right.
And so I thoroughly enjoyed this. And also there's some mermaids. And so it felt kind of refreshing after reading. I've read a lot of fae stories, right? So it was nice getting a different feel. How did you come up, or what inspired you for these stories?
I've just always been a Disney girly. Like, I grew up just loving Disney. I went to college and I majored in screenwriting to get my BA in screenwriting. I went to school in LA, and so I was gonna, go the screenwriting route and try and be like a big Hollywood screenwriter. But while I was there, I really, like, my dream was to work for Disney and to write, all these Disney movies. So I came up, when I was in college, I came up with an idea for a script about Prince. Well, he was not a prince. He was called Prince Charming, but he was actually like a thief who stole a mirror. And that was like the basis. It was originally a very like Disney-esque type script. And it was slightly a different story, but that was really the theme, or the crux of it, was like a thief steals a mirror and he's going to con a princess to try and break the mirror and get something out of it that he wanted. And that was the screenplay I wrote, and it was just my favorite. Like, it always like held a really close place to my heart, I never ended up selling it. It did place in like a few competitions, so I was excited and I thought it would go somewhere, but it just never did. And years later, my husband wanted to read it because I had talked about it a lot, but he had never actually read the screenplay. So I gave it to him and he was like, this is just so good. Like, you have to do something with this. And at that time I was back in Kansas City. Like, I had given up on my dream of being a Hollywood screenwriter. I was like, that's not going to happen at this point. And I was like, there's really nothing I can do with it now. He's like, well, you could turn it into a book. And I'm like, well, I don't know how to write a book. Like, I majored in screenwriting. I know how to write screenplays, not books. But that really got the wheels turning. And that is basically how Mirror of Malice was born. Like, it took me a few years after he suggested that to really start working on it seriously. But I did, and I turned it into a book.
That is an amazing story, T. So, okay. So what school did you go to in LA?
I went to Loyola Marymount University, and I majored in screenwriting and film.
That's amazing. I love film. I feel like that makes sense, given the world that you're in and creating these stories that transport readers to different worlds and lands, to be also really into movies. So
yeah.
That's so cool.
Thank you.
So you went to college in LA?
Yes.
How long were you there for?
I lived in LA for 8 years. My dream was to break into Hollywood. I graduated from school, and I was just like, I feel like I was that like cliche LA person. Like, I was living in an apartment, in a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment with 4 other girls. There was 3 of us sharing 1 bedroom and 1 bathroom. And, we were in this cheap, crappy apartment. I was like a waitress by night, interning by day, like trying to like break into these studios. And I just quickly was like, this is not for me. Like, I'm not good with the networking. And I was young, and I just kind of gave up really quickly. Like, I was just like, I can't do this. I don't know how to network. I don't know how to like schmooze and like meet the right people and get the connections I need. And I was also just really tired of like not having any money. So I was like, I just want stability, And so I really had no idea because this has been my dream my entire life, to be a writer. So I didn't know what to do with myself, but everyone in my family, so many people in my family were teachers. And I was like, I just want stability. I just want like a job and like a stable paycheck, and like teaching is stable. There's always going to be teaching jobs, So I decided to go. I went to UCLA and I got my master's in education and got my teaching degree. and became an English teacher. I was like, if I can't write, I'll just teach how to write, you know? So I did that, but then I ended up deciding to use my degree to travel, and I lived in countries around the world, and I taught in international schools and all that stuff. And then somewhere in between Mexico and Tanzania, I met my husband coming back home on a trip back home in Kansas City. And yeah, so then I met him. I had already signed a 2-year contract to go teach in Tanzania, but we did long distance. And then after Tanzania, I was just like, well, I can't travel anymore. I want to go home and like get married and be with him. So that kind of cut my traveling short. But yeah, so that's basically how I ended up back in Kansas City. And then
T, that's an amazing story. Okay, so LA, so you were out there trying to live, trying to survive, working, and then you had an internship too? Where was your internship?
It was at like I did multiple internships at like small. I applied to get like the Disney ones and the big ones with like NBC and CBS, and I just like couldn't. I don't even remember the name, to be honest. I did a bunch of different internships at like just small little movie studios, just like trying anything I could. And of course they're not paid. So it's like you're working for free. It's like it can be very demoralizing.
Though, right? Like what? Really cutthroat. Sorry.
Yes, cutthroat. Okay? Yes, I can. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Like just trying to make it out there. I feel like, and earlier you were talking about having to schmooze and network and
that is just like not me. I had friends who were killing it, and that was also I was excited for them, but like it was a little demoralizing for me, like seeing them like get these internships, and I'm like, well, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't I do that? You know? So it just felt like, well, this is just I just want to write. Like, I don't want to have to do all this other stuff. I just want to write. So I was like, maybe it just isn't meant to be. Like, I can write for fun. I can write as like a side hobby, as a passion, but like it's not going to be like a career for me. Like, it is what it is. And I kind of made my peace with that. And yeah.
And then here you are. Yeah, I mean, I think that makes total sense. And around that time too, the recession was well, it was just
2008. It was a little bit after, but yeah.
A little bit after, but I think the economy was still trying to rebuild, and it was just a crazy time. And then let alone you're in a whole new world trying to make it happen. And gosh, I can only imagine how hard that was.
Yeah.
And wanting that steady paycheck makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. And then not wanting to share one bedroom with 2 other.
No, ma'am.
Oh, no, ma'am. God, I was like, I'm 22. I just want my own bedroom.
Oh, absolutely. You're like, I've already done the college life thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So then you did your grad school and then you taught for a while in California. Is that right?
I did. I only taught for a couple years in LA before I moved to Mexico, and then I taught there. And then I came home to Kansas City for just like a little break to kind of figure out, and I taught for a year in Kansas City, which is when I met my husband. Well, I was just kind of taking a break between travel, and then I went to Tanzania for, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It was fun. It
was
an really
incredible story. Yeah. And, it's so interesting, your themes of, clearly travel is important to you. It is also important to me. I love it so much. And you can kind of pick up on some of your themes of travel, especially in, I haven't read Mirror of Malice yet, but especially in this guy, because the characters are traveling, right? Yes. Like they're literally in one ship.
Yeah.
For a lot of it. So, and they're seeing different worlds. I think that's great. You kind of incorporated maybe some of your love for travel in these books.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And Gabrielle is like an adventurer. She like wants to get out and see the world. So like, that's definitely like a piece of myself that I put, into her. So yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I definitely felt kindred spirit with that piece of like wanting to see the world and travel, and that's amazing. Okay. So, and you're from Kansas City area?
Yes.
We're all over the place.
It's okay. It's fun. Just hopping.
I hop around, but then on top of that too, our kiddo has not been sleeping super well. She has croup. And so I'm really highly caffeinated right now. So I might be jumping around.
That's okay. Yeah, no, I feel that in my soul. So don't worry.
Okay, so from Kansas City. Brothers, sisters?
Yeah, I have two. I have an older brother, an older sister, and then a younger sister. So one brother and two sisters.
Okay. Are they here in the area as well?
Yes, everyone is. My sister lives out in Hays, Kansas, which is about 5 hours from here. Her and her husband bought our family farm that like my dad grew up on, that like my grandpa built and everything like that. They bought it from my grandparents, passed it down to my uncle. My uncle was ready to sell it, but we really wanted to keep it in the family if we could. So they bought it and they're living out their cottage core farm life dreams with their kids out in Hays, Kansas. So they're the farthest away, but they're not too far.
Yeah, that's amazing. T, your life, I think, is so incredible. It's so interesting. Like in some of these family dynamics, right? Of like, so did you grow up visiting Hays?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. The farm was like my absolute favorite place. I loved going out there. I would go during the summer. I would have my parents would drive me and drop me off, and I would stay there for 2 weeks because my dad has 7 siblings and they all lived in that area. Like none of them left Hays. My dad is one of the only ones that left Hays, Kansas. And so I would just go out there and stay at the farm and for, a few weeks, and I just loved it. I would stay with my aunt and uncle who lived there. They didn't have any kids. And then I had an aunt that lived nearby and another uncle that lived on his own farm nearby. So like, it was just fun. I would just go from like farm to farm and play with all the farm animals, and just like, it was just a summer thing I did every summer, and I loved it. So yeah, the farm has like a special place in my heart. I have realized growing up I could not live there. Like, I need to be close enough to an airport. Hays is like, the closest airport is Kansas City. So it's like 5 hours. And I just don't think I do well in that small of a town with, Kansas. We have such a great area in Kansas City. There's so much to do here.
We really do. We're kind of like, I feel like it's like a secret,
I know.
like I think, but we're growing. I think the secret is getting out a little bit of like how cool.
It's such a great place. And like after living in LA, and like I just hated LA. No offense to LA, but I hated it living there. It was just so crowded. There's the traffic like built up a rage in me that I just can't. Like, it was like major just road rage. I hated the traffic and being stuck in it. I felt like I couldn't go anywhere because it would be like a 2-hour drive no matter where I wanted to go, and it was just frustrating. So LA was not for me, but like Kansas City is just so perfect because
it's a nice blend.
Yes.
It's like we have our cool artists. There's cool restaurants.
There's so much to do, but like you can escape from it. And yeah, you don't have to deal with like the insane traffic and whatever. I mean, there's traffic, but it's nothing like LA. So anyways, I grew up going to the farm a lot and I love it. I still love taking my kids and visiting my sister out there and everything like that. But I have definitely realized it's just not a place like the aesthetic of it sounds so fun. Like, oh, farm life and living out on the farm. But like the reality I know would not be for me.
No, for sure. And one last thing that I want to say about Kansas City, like our hometown. I mean, now we have Taylor fucking Swift.
Oh my God, so, I know. I'm obsessed. I am obsessed with Taylor and Travis. They're amazing.
Oh my gosh, love it. And of course, Patty Mahomes. I mean, we've got some good stuff here.
We've got so much good stuff.
This is not an ad for Kansas City, but
it could be. It could be. Come look here. No, don't. We want to keep it a secret for a little while longer.
Okay, so brothers, sisters, are you close to them? Since they're in the area?
Yeah, I mean, we don't like see each other a ton for living. I don't know. We have such busy lives, It's like my brother has 3 kids, and then my sister is out in Hays. She's pregnant with baby number 6. So I know. And then I have a little sister, and like she lives in downtown. She's just like living her life, doing her thing. So I don't know. We probably see each other once a month, maybe. We all like go to my mom's, and that's like we'll hang out at my mom's house or whatever. But we don't see each other a lot. But when we do see each other, we have a good time. I mean, we love to get like our kids together mainly. Like the cousins love seeing each other. My daughter is like obsessed with, because my brother's 8 years older than me and my older sister is 6 years older. So like they have slightly older kids. Well, now my sister's pregnant with baby number 6. So I mean, that was a surprise. But for the most part, they have slightly older kids. So like my daughter just like loves her older cousins, and she loves hanging out, and they like love like taking her around and, you know, getting to play with her and things like that. So like that's a really fun dynamic to see.
And how old are your kids?
My daughter is going to be 4 in a few weeks, and then my son is going to be 2 at the end of June. So I'm like in the thick of it.
You are in the thick of it.
It's like a rough age for both of them, but for like totally different reasons.
How is your almost 4-year-old? Because our almost 3.5-year-olds, she's been going through she's definitely our three-nager, but it's
yes.
a little bit better.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So much attitude, so stubborn. She says no to everything. She doesn't know what she wants, like, ever. Like, and I try to do the choices thing. I'm like, would you like strawberries or would you like blueberries? And she's like, neither. And I'm like, hey, this is not working. You know.
So how do you write with having kids?
I know. I don't even. For real. It's really. I just try, and I'm like, I just have to sneak it in whenever I can. Like, I cannot be one of those people that needs like a quiet, calm environment. I would never get anything done. So like, if my kids are actually playing together on the floor nicely, which is rare, I will get out my laptop and just get whatever I can down. And then I love taking them outside because I can actually sit like on our patio, because we have like patio furniture, and I can sit there and I can actually write, and like they can be more distracted outside for sure than they are inside, like in our backyard, running around and whatever, especially if there's water involved. That's why I'm like looking forward to just like having hotter weather, and I can get like the water table out and get like the, you know, the sprinkler out and things like that. And like they will just play in the water for like a good solid amount of time so I can actually get work done. But really nap time is like when I have to do it. My daughter doesn't take naps anymore, but we do quiet time with her. So my son will go down for a nap, and then it's her quiet time just for 30 minutes. That's the most I can get her to stay in her room for quiet time. But then she'll come out, and that I'll usually just put on TV for the rest of my son's nap. That's like the only time she can watch TV is when I'm trying to get that work done. And that's really like that 2-hour chunk when he's napping is like, that's pretty much it for me. As far as writing goes. And then whatever I can't get done during that, I just do at night after they go to bed, which I don't like to do that because I'm tired and I don't really want to, like, I just want to relax. But I don't know. I'm very focused in like what I need to do, and I have like daily word counts I need to meet. And so like, I'm going to hit that no matter what.
That's incredible. I mean, especially so you're a full-time stay-at-home mom, right, T? Or
My daughter did start preschool this year. She goes 3 days a week, and it's half days, so it's not anything crazy. But yeah,
I can imagine that helps though, of like during that.
Yes.
I don't know.
I made that face because I actually thought it was going to help. I was like, this is going to be perfect. I'm just going to have one kid at home with me again. This is going to be great. But what I discovered is that my son is bored without my daughter. So like, she actually distracted him a lot of times. And like, you know, they would like play together so that I could like get a little bit of work done. But like without her, I can't even bring my laptop out. Like he will grab it, throw it, stomp on it. Like he just wants to play with it. He just thinks it's a toy. I cannot work. So anyways, it kind of backfired on me just a little bit, but it still is. I mean, it's nice just having to manage one kid, you know, for some of the time.
Sure. But like, I think in theory, it sounded like a brilliant idea.
Right.
And then you're like, now you get to be the playmate for your son. You're like, oh gosh, but I really need to write, I don't know, Gabriel or Gabrielle's story or whatever.
It's backfired a little bit, but I think she needs to be in preschool. It's good for her at the end of the day, so it is what it is. And, you know, she's going to preschool.
Hey yo, time for an ad. My friend Bree is the proud owner of Miles on Paper. It is an online bookstore where magic and adventure come to life through the pages of indie books. At Miles on Paper, they are passionate about connecting independent authors with readers, and they do this by curating unique blind date book bundles. custom book boxes, blind date puzzles, and a remarkable collection of traditionally published books. By the way, their blind date book bundles are so much fun. I had the honor of getting one myself. I highly recommend. You can find her website at www.milesonpaper.com. Check them out.
So, are you a pantser or a plotter?
I'm definitely a plotter. I've always been a plotter. Yeah, I love Save the Cat, which is a really good like plotting book for authors. It's a really simple outline. I love Romancing the Beat for romance. That's a plotting thing for romance authors. And so for fantasy romance, you kind of need to have like both. Like you can't just use Romancing the Beat and you can't just use Save the Cat. Like you have to have like both of them kind of pushed together. So I use both of those a bit in my plotting. I also recently started using, I don't know if you know anything about Enneagrams, but they like I love using I haven't used them for my previous books, but for book 3, which is like fully written and ready to go almost, I use the Enneagrams to plot out like the character arcs and to really like dig deeper into like the character wounds and to figure out like how the characters would like how they would go together really well and like what would attract them to each other, because for the first 2 books are just single POV from the female perspective. But for book 3, I really realized like I need both them. It needs to be dual POV from the male and the female. And so like I really wanted to I feel like I just wanted to dig a lot deeper into the characters and their arcs and like really figure out like why they fall for each other and what they bring out in each other. So anyways, another writer had suggested using Enneagrams and I was like, that's so interesting. And I did it and it just like really helped me figure out their character arcs and their wounds and like, so I loved that and I had a lot of fun with it. So that's something new that I'm now implementing into my plotting processes. I'm also, on top of doing like Romancing the Beat and Save the Cat, I'm also like using these Enneagrams to try and like dig deeper into their wounds and really figure out like why they have the wounds that they do and like how they need to heal and all that good stuff.
Queen, that is amazing. That is amazing. I have always wondered how characters are developed. And I think that the Enneagram is an amazing tool. So for folks that don't know what it is, you want to explain it real fast?
It's different, I guess, personality types, but it goes like a lot deeper into that. Like it talks about your fears, like what fears you might have, what like pitfalls you might have, how you can kind of be like a most destructive version of that type and how you could be like the best version. I think there's 9 types total.
Yep.
Yeah, there's 9 types total, and I haven't even really done it for myself. Like I don't even know what to ask you. I don't know what Enneagram I am. I have done Clifton Strengths, so I've done them. I know my Clifton Strengths, but I haven't done the Enneagram for myself. But I've done it for my characters, so like I know what Enneagrams they are.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't dug deep into Mirror of Malice or Ship of Shadows, so like I don't know what they are. But for book 3, Tower of Tempest, I do know what those characters are. So
that's so fascinating. Yeah, so the Enneagram, it really is, these different types are driven by their woundedness. And then at the root of it, it's like, I think, and I use Enneagram sometimes in my therapy with some of my clients. I'm not like an expert. I know there's some therapists, especially in the Kansas City area, that like love and utilize the Enneagram. It's just a tool, right? But so like the different types have different driving forces, like you were saying, T, but like at the root of it, it could be shame or fear or anger. Excuse me. So I think the first Enneagram, and you can correct me if I'm wrong too, if you know this, but I think Enneagram 1, 2, and 3 might be shame based.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. There's
something like that. And there's like body, heart, and head or something like that. Like they're all, I don't know a ton about, I mean, I've read all of them because I had to kind of figure out where my characters fit, but
yeah, honestly, that is the best way too to figuring out what your type is. They suggest not doing like if you were to do the quiz, like that is just a guiding factor, but to actually read all of the different types to kind of figure out and uncover what number you are. So I'm a 4, wing 3. But yeah, I wonder if you have some 3 in you. I don't know. I'm just meeting you and you can't really type other people, but
I'll
Are
have
you?
to take it eventually. I will. I
Yes.
want to do it. Yeah, I love those types of things. I always think they're so fascinating. Like just doing the Clifton Strengths. I don't know if you know the Clifton Strengths, but just doing like the
Uh,
Clifton Strengths has helped me a lot, and it's been
what,
really interesting. So,
what is yours?
Clifton Strengths. My top three are number one, I'm focus. Number two, achiever. Number three, discipline. So those are my top three. So
Yeah, so the number 3 is the achiever for the Enneagram.
okay,
So
yeah,
you
that might
might have some of that in you.
be in there.
Can you share what the types are for your characters, or would that be too much of a spoiler
No,
for the
it's
next?
fine. So Tower of Tempest is book 3. Poppy is a number 2 Enneagram. So she's like a giver. Um, and she definitely like her wound is that she is not enough if she's not giving. So like she needs to earn people's love. She needs to earn everything. Like she's not worthy unless she's like earned it. That's kind of a big thing with her, and it holds her back from a lot of things, exploring relationships and her magic and all these things. And then Locke, the MMC, he is which one?
The Playboy, right?
Yeah, he's the Playboy. I think he's number 7 or number 9. I can't remember which he's.
So sevens are like the fun,
Yes.
like idea people.
Yes, so basically he's a mediator. That's his big thing. He has a fear of conflict. He has a fear of why he's a playboy. Like he goes from relationship to relationship because he has a fear of conflict and fighting and things like that. And growing up, like he was a big mediator between like his siblings and his parents. Like he was always the one making the jokes and easing the tension between everybody. So that kind of led him to just view relationships as like dangerous. Like there's a lot of fighting, there's a lot of conflict. Like I just want things to be easy, low key, and so he has always avoided relationships because of that. And he's also, him and Poppy are both like, it's like sunshine meets sunshine, but in like different ways. And so, I love it because like my dynamics for the first 2 books have very much been like enemies to lovers, like grumpy, cynical. And so you have these 2 like sunshiny characters, and it's more like a friends to lovers. And I don't know, it was just so different of a dynamic. And I just like, I don't know, I love them so much. I think they're just such great characters, and I'm super excited to like send arcs out and for people to get to read these books. So yeah.
That's amazing. So how did you decide to do different tropes for this one? Were you just wanting to try something new?
No, it was an accident. Like it was not what I had planned, because my plan was I wanted to write a series where all the books had the same tropes. So people who love enemies to lovers and a morally gray and all that could get like 5 books of the same tropes, and that was my plan. And then this book, it was such an all the other books in the series are going to be that, but like this book, it just did not. Like when I started writing it, Poppy and Locke just like they could not fit into that. Like they were supposed to be enemies to lovers, but it was just not who they were. I don't know. I didn't mean this at all. This book is definitely like going to be like the outlier in the series.
So it sounds like it just kind of evolved organically.
Yeah.
And I think it's really, really cool how you use the Enneagram to help inspire you. And
I'm excited. Yeah.
It adds a lot of depth.
It does.
It adds to add a lot of depth to your characters.
It adds, I feel like Poppy and Locke are probably like the most developed because of this. Like I obviously tried to develop, I don't think I did a bad job of developing the characters in the other books, but I feel like I really dove into like Poppy and Locke and their fears and like more of their backstory than I did as much for the other characters. So I'm excited. And then in book 4, I'm doing the same thing again. Like I won't reveal too much. And I don't even know their Enneagrams yet because I have like the plot of the skeleton of the story for book 4, and I obviously know what fairy tale it is and what couple it is, but like I haven't dove into their Enneagrams. But it's going to be grumpy sunshine again, and it's going to be more like the morally gray. Like it's going to be more similar to Mirror Malice and Ship of Shadows. But yeah, no, this has like opened up a new world to me using the Enneagrams. Like I feel like I'm just going to use this now for every book, because it also tells you like what types go best together. And that was how that was how I figured out what Locke and Poppy were, because I saw what, that 2 and 9 go together really well. And so that helps too, to make sure, like, you can really see like what they bring out in each other, and like why they're falling in love with each other, which is like something I really wanted to like dig more deep into. Like, what does he bring out in her and what does she bring out in him that makes them like their best selves?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that so much. So how did you decide then, if you read all genres, I guess, like, how did you decide on this particular genre?
I've just always, like, when I was a teenager, my first introduction, my mom bought me like Tamara Pierce, her books, and Juliet Marillier with her 7 Water series, Sharon Shin with her Archangel series. Like, she was just buying me. She went to Barnes. I love to read, and so she went to Barnes and Noble and just bought me all these like fantasy books, and they all had romance in them. Fantasy romance like wasn't a genre back then, but I read them and I just loved them, and so that was really the first genre I really like fell in love with, was fantasy romance. And throughout my teens, that's pretty much like exclusively what I read. And then as I got older, I started reading like contemporary romance and women's fiction and things like that. But fantasy, and like I said, I grew up a Disney girl. Like, I've always loved fairy tales. I love magic. I love having a whole new world to escape into that is not this world. And I actually started off writing paranormal women's fiction. Like, I have a whole paranormal women's fiction series, but that's also like magic and things like that. But I just quickly kind of realized that fantasy romance is what had my heart. So after I finished my paranormal women's fiction series, I decided to make like a serious pivot to fantasy romance, and like, this was my lane and this is where I'm going to stay. So yeah, that's what I did at the beginning of this year. January is when I made the pivot and released Mirror of Malice. So
mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and you've done so well. Like, yeah, it's amazing. You definitely, I mean, I felt immersed in this story of Ship of Shadows. I'm really excited to read Mirror of Malice, but I wanted, like I said, the piratey feel.
Which is totally fair. I mean, yeah, that, like I said, that's why I did what I did. I really wanted them to be like interconnected standalones. So like, if people were like, I'm not really into Snow White, not really into that, like, they could jump in at like Ship of Shadows if they wanted to, or if they really want a Rapunzel retelling, jump in at Tower of Tempest and like get the story you want, and then maybe you'll go back and read the other books. But like, if you don't, that's okay.
So Tower of Tempest, which is the next one, that is going to be more of a Rapunzel.
Yeah, Rapunzel meets Anastasia. Mm-hmm. It's kind of.
As a little girl, I was obsessed with that Anastasia like story. I remember even, I think it was at the Nelson, they had, when I was little, this is so rando, but when I was little, they had like an exhibit, and my parents took me to this like Anastasia, exhibit, and it was like fascinating.
It is fascinating. I know. I love like the
stars and
it's not Disney, but like whatever. The animated movie is just so
I watched that movie.
Good.
It feels magical in a sense, even though it isn't. Like, I don't know. I think that world with the czars,
exactly. Well, I think it's like a little bit different, than like your typical Disney like fairy tale retelling, because it's like rooted in like a real world, but there's like the magic in it, and so I don't know. It's just I love Anastasia too. I think it's so fascinating, and it just fit like so well. And something that readers have said they like about my stories is that I like mishmash fairy tales, and I put like multiple fairy tales in each book and things like that. And so I was like, and that was something I didn't mean to do with Mirror of Malice. Like, it was firmly supposed to be a Snow White retelling, and then people were reading it and they're like, I'm getting like Robin Hood too, and I'm getting like this and that. And I was like, oh yeah, that's so true. So then with Ship of Shadows, I did it more intentionally and like added a few more like fairy tale Easter eggs, and then I did the same thing with Tower of Tempest. It's like multiple kind of fairy tales like mishmashed together. So
who is your favorite character to write?
Oh gosh, I mean Driscoll is just so funny. He's just, I love him because he's the one who like eases the tension. When there's like a tense moment or whatever, he's the one who I can bring in and just like make me happy again. Like he's, you know, so I really like Driscoll. I will say like I do like a lot of like things for my ARC team, like bonuses and stuff like that if they share my posts. And so I let them vote, and they on like if they wanted a bonus chapter from a character, and I gave them some different options, and they voted they wanted a bonus chapter from Driscoll, like from his POV. And so I sent that to them after they shared one of my cover reveals or whatever. And I just realized I could never like write a book in his head, because like just that chapter was so much like being in his head. Like he's just
too much.
He's too much. I'm like, I don't think people would want to read. People say they want to read a whole book about him, but I'm like, I think you would be so sick of being in his head by like it would just be too much. So yeah, I did realize that he's really good as a side character. We're gonna keep him that way.
I've been seeing online lots of people pushing for a book from his perspective. So when this comes out, you're really like when I publish this, you're really speaking to the fact of like, I don't know, it would be,
Readers
a lot
love
to write.
Driscoll, like. And I'm so glad they love him. Like it was a surprise, actually. I was not planning he was just going to be in Mirror of Malice, like new characters in Ship of Shadows, but readers loved him, and he is not in Mirror of Malice as much as he is in Ship of Shadows. Like
okay. I was curious about that.
He's in the beginning and he's towards the end, but the middle part he's not there for reasons. And so I was just I was like, oh my gosh, people really love Driscoll. So I was like, I need to get him in the other books because readers like love him so much. And so now it's kind of like to me, it's just kind of like a little joke where Driscoll's just like hopping along from like book to book, and he's just appearing in each book somehow. And
he's a vibe for sure. Yeah. And I'm here for it. And I love that you like took into account readers like feedback, their perspective.
I definitely try to. I mean, yeah, like I want to write, these books are for readers, you know, it's for like my audience. And so things that they love, like I want to keep doing and continuing and, you know, give them what they want in these books while not like sacrificing like my, you know, vision and goals and things like that. But I definitely try to. And I think that's the cool thing about being an indie author is like I can do that. I can just pivot, you know, like I had already had the whole story outlined and written, and then I was seeing readers' response to like Mirror Mouse, and I was like, I'm gonna add Driscoll into this. And so I think that's like the cool thing about doing this is I can do whatever I want.
Yeah, I mean that is interesting, especially being a self-proclaimed like plotter that you pivoted to. So you responded to the feedback that was provided.
Yeah. And I figured out how I could work Driscoll in. And I mean, it worked out really well. And then it did for book 3 too. And it was like, well, this is perfect. Driscoll can just be in every book and be the sidekick. And then it's just also nice too, because there's familiarity. Like I don't have to create brand new whole cast for every book. So that actually is nice for me too, because that would be harder to have to create like brand new sidekicks and side characters for like every new story. So that does make it easier on me.
For sure. I mean, it helps with the continuity of the story. And I think that's helpful too for readers to be able to connect with these different, characters on a more deep level. I've wondered how authors have done that when there are so many different characters of trying to keep everybody straight. And so I think it's brilliant that you've come up with this Enneagram too, sort of tool to utilize to keep track of every single character of like, okay, well, this character falls into this personality type, even though it's not foolproof or whatever, but that can help, I would think, organize it, because I don't understand how you guys are able to maintain these lists of characters and then write from their different perspectives, and they all have a different voice, right? Like,
well, and I think the voice definitely comes from like the wound, and because you have an author voice, you know, you read my books and hopefully like it's like this is a T. Harlowe book, you know. And I mean I see that for like authors like Emily Henry. Like I open up an Emily Henry book and I'm like, this is an Emily Henry book, definitely. But like, so the author voice is really the same, but the characters are different because of like their different wounds and their different experiences and their different backgrounds, even if their voices might sound a little bit similar just because it's like that author voice coming through. But it's really like their wounds and their backstories. And so, yeah, that's why I kind of wanted to like step up my game with that. And I was like, I really want to like delve deeper into these characters so I can make them really different and unique and make sure that people aren't like reading these books and be like, oh, this kind of seems like the same as like the last book. And, I didn't want that. So I think that helps.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. And then some of the scenes in the books kind of steamy. I haven't read again the Mirror of Malice, but like
Ship of Shadows is like a little spicier than Mirror of Malice. Yeah.
that was another reason why I wanted to read that first, because I was just sort of in the vibe.
Right.
I wanted a little bit more steam. How did it feel writing those scenes?
I mean, it's always like a little awkward. Like it's always just like, I don't know where, and it's so funny. I was joking with another author friend, when you get copy edits back, it's always like the copy editors are just like so professional and so just like it's so embarrassing sometimes. Like the copy editor will be like, his hand is here, but that doesn't seem anatomically possible unless like he's using magic to like they're just so like literal. And I'm like, no, I didn't mean, I didn't mean to do that. That was just a typo on my part. Like his hand cannot be there. You're right. Like, and it's hysterical. Or they're like, he was just on top of her a moment ago. So like, how is he like behind her now? And it's just like, oh, whoops. Like,
you're like, yeah, I've got all these great ideas, and how do you execute it?
Jumped ahead there. And normally I have to rewrite. Like in Ship of Shadows, the original like main like sex scene between the two characters, I had to rewrite. Can I say that? Sorry.
Oh, it's hot. Okay, this is a book for adults, so this podcast is for adults.
Just making sure I wasn't like saying something I wasn't sure. But I originally wrote it and I was like, ugh, this just isn't good. Like it's not like, I'm not getting the tension when I'm rereading it. I'm just not. And so I had to rewrite it like multiple times to get the right tension and to get things the way I wanted it to be so that readers could really like feel it. And it's been the same with Tower of Tempest. Like I had a sex scene and then I just completely scrapped it and like rewrote it and put it in a different location and put it in a different point in the book. Like, so those are the ones that I have to really work at. Like I typically don't rewrite scenes. That's not something I do as a plotter. Like my books are usually pretty clean and I don't do super heavy revisions. But yeah, sex scenes are harder for me to write. Like those are some of the hardest for sure. And yeah, you want it to like pay off for the reader.
I was gonna say, what do you feel like is the hardest? Are you putting a lot of pressure on yourself to get it right, or what do you think makes it the most difficult?
I think because I've been writing for a long time, and I started off after my husband wanted me to turn that screenplay into a book. I did, and the original book was called The Reflection Thief, and it was a book that is very different from Mirror of Malice, but still had it was more similar to the screenplay than Mirror of Malice is. And I started off wanting to query it and get an agent. So I spent 6 years in the query trenches trying to get an agent, and I did get an agent, and I went the traditional route. But that whole time I was writing YA. So I was not putting sex in my books, and that original The Reflection Thief, it was more of a YA book. So writing sex scenes was very new to me. In Mirror of Malice, that's with Penn and Lilith, that was the first one I wrote. And so I think I'm more I read tons of books that have sex scenes in them, but that was the first one I'd written. So these, to me, it's just I always feel a little bit I'm newer at this. I've only been writing sex scenes for a few months now. So I want to make sure it pays off for the readers and that it's the tension is good and I don't want it to fall flat. And so I think I can just feel a little self-conscious about that because I'm newer at it and I haven't done that as much as other authors. And I read all these other books and I'm like, oh my God, this is so good. This is so, woo, and I want my readers to feel that way too. And so I'm always a little self-conscious about making sure it pays off and yeah.
Yeah. No, I can imagine that is how it would feel. And for the first interview, I interviewed Dana Evan.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've read her book.
I've heard so much about it, and it has a mirror. I actually reached out to her. I was like, we need to do a giveaway because both of our books have mirrors on them. And she was really nice. She's like, yes, let's do a giveaway. So anyways, that might be coming.
Dana, if you're listening to this, listen make that happen. But no, the reason why I'm bringing her into this, sorry, Dana, but is because she did share, and this is in the podcast, of like, there was one scene that she wrote and she and her husband were trying it out and like the positioning, and they couldn't make it work. So that's similar to what you were saying with the, I guess, the revisions, the whatever. They're like, his hand cannot be here. So that, yeah, it's like, it's got to be possible.
Right.
But no, this sex scenes were steamy, and I thought it was woo!
Good. That's what I want.
So good. Has your husband read some of these scenes too?
I've sent him maybe like a few. He'll see, like, because I make like pull quotes, and I'll choose like some steamy kind of, like, I know for Mirror Malice, one of my pull quotes was like, I'll get on my knees for you, princess, and like, I'll show you just how much I want to worship you. And so my husband saw that as a pull quote, and he was like, what in the, and I was like, it would be nice if you said things like that to me.
That's hysterical. I literally sent my husband one of your quotes in the book. Oh my gosh, let me see if I can find it. I don't have my because in my Kindle I highlight, and he's like, oh my gosh, you're so nerdy. What was it? It was,
I know, my husband makes fun of me. He's like, I say better things than that to you. And I was like, okay, like, come on.
No, but it's so true. I think it was something like, you're ingrained in my being.
Oh, yeah. I know what quote you're talking about.
Swoon worthy, folks.
I know, Bastion he is just
very swoon worthy.
Yeah. So my husband doesn't, I don't send him like I could, I guess. I don't know if he would even care. He just like, so like, I do that all the time. I'm better than that. Like, that's him. He's very much just like, I'm better than the heroes you write. Like, don't even try.
You're like, yes, you are, honey. Yes, you are. You are my MMC.
Yeah, I'm like, okay. Stop being so like arrogant and cocky, please. Like,
so Tower of Tempest is coming out. When is that coming out?
June 20th it comes out.
When you have gone through this process of publishing, can you share a little bit more about what your process is like as an indie author?
Yeah. Basically, I'm a pretty fast drafter. I've always been a fast drafter, even when I was on the trad route. Like, I was producing so quickly, like my agent just could never keep up. She was like, you really don't need to send me another book. Like, we're still on sub with your first book, So that should have been my first clue that like trad was.
What does that mean?
Oh, it's when your agent sends your manuscript out to like editors at the big publishers. And so your manuscript is on sub, it's on submission basically with them. And so your agent has sent them out on submission with editors at the big 5 or whatever, wherever the public. So, and it's a really, 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 really long process. It can take them like a year to get back to you. And so being on sub can just take years before you sell a manuscript. Like, it's just such a long process. And I'm such a fast drafter. Like, that should have been my first clue that like, that was just not the right route for me, because I was just piling up manuscripts that I wrote and like, there was just nowhere to put them.
Is that for screenwriting then?
No, that's for books. For authors, there's 2 different routes you can go. You can go the traditional route where you can get an agent, and your agent will send your manuscripts out to publishers, or you can go the indie route. And so the trad route is hard because getting an agent is really, really hard. First of all, like, it can take years and years and years to get an agent because it's just so competitive, and an agent just really has to like connect with your manuscript and believe that they can sell it, because agents don't make money until they've sold your book to a publisher. So like, it's just, the trad route is a really hard route to take, but it's also nothing is guaranteed. You get an agent and it doesn't mean your book is going to sell, because so many manuscripts die on sub, like no editors want to buy them. And it's a really long, hard process. And it's really hard to like make a career out of that, because none of it is in your control. You can't control if you get an agent. You can't control if your agent sells your manuscript. And on top of that, it takes a really, really, really long time. But then the plus side is that if your book does sell, you don't have to do anything. All the copy editing, the cover, everything is taken care of for you. So that's kind of like for people who don't want to have to make all those business decisions and be like the sole business owner, they can just write the books. And so that's kind of the benefit of trad pub. But yeah, so for indie, obviously you have all the control and whatever. So I'm a pretty fast drafter. So typically, and also like I told you, my top 3 Clifton strengths are focus, discipline, and achiever. So like I'm really good at like setting deadlines and goals and meeting them. Like, so that's typically where I start is I'm like, well, when do I want to release this book? Pick the date. And then I just work backwards from that. Like, okay, if I want to release it by June 20th, it has to be at the copy editor by this date. So it has to be to ARC readers by this date. So it has to be to beta readers by this date. So it has to be written by this date. And so I just work backwards that way. And then I literally just plug in how many words I want it to be. And so then I know how many words I have to write per week. And that's what I do. And then I just do it. And that is so different. I mean, authors are so different. So that is like my process. But for some authors, that could be so stifling and so like anxiety inducing. So like that is my process, but that is definitely not like, I'm sure you know, talking to other authors on your podcast, but that's just not what all authors do. But that's just, I'm a very scheduled person. I like schedules and I like to set goals, and like, because discipline and focus are like my top strengths, I'm just really good at like meeting goals. So that's what I do.
Yeah, that's incredible. And then after you write your book and it goes to the beta, right, readers, are you publishing this all on your own then? Like, are you up fronting the bill? I'm just curious how that all works.
Yeah, so you have to buy the covers and hire the copy editor. Luckily, like, because I published my paranormal women's fiction series last year and it's just done really well for me. So like I'm still making enough money from that like I can use that money to like cover the costs of like these books. But it's one of those things where like I don't want to be like doom and gloom or anything, but you know, I have to remind readers like in order for me to keep writing books in this series, I do need these books to like sell a certain amount, and I need to be making a certain amount of money. I can't go on and write book 4 in the series if the first 3 books are not selling, because that's just a waste of my time. Like I'm more of a career, you know, some people are doing this while working full-time jobs and it's more of a side. That's like not me. I'm trying to make this a career for myself. So like I do have to look at costs and things like that and how much income I'm bringing in. And so if it gets to a point where the series is not making enough money, the advice is like cut the series short and just move on. Start a new series and try and make that more tropey and more whatever and try and get that to take off. Like, and of course you don't want to do that because I have a plan to continue the series. Like I have.
And you're so invested. Like you're invested in these characters. I can imagine that starting over would be so
hard.
And
I mean, this is a business to me. So like I can do that. I can start, I have other ideas. I like want to do that? Of course not. Like I want to finish the series and I know there are people who love this series and who love these characters. And so I don't want to do that to them. But it does have to be a business decision at the end of the day. You know, like I can't keep paying for covers and paying for editing and whatever if the series is not. So sometimes it is hard when I see readers who are saying like, well, I wait until the whole series is finished before I read it. Because it's like, well, that's hard on indie authors because that's expecting us to write a whole series for you for basically free. You know, that doesn't help us. Maybe for trad pub authors because their books are already bought by the publishers. They don't have to front any costs. Like that doesn't hurt them as much. But like for indie authors, that can hurt us more because then we're like, oh, well, our books aren't selling. So we have to, you know, well, we have readers who are like, well, I'm going to wait till it's finished. And then you just can't finish it because they're not reading or buying, you know, but luckily like it's hard to explain that to readers because you don't want to like disappoint them. But luckily my series has been doing I'm pretty confident I'm going to be able to finish it. You know, like it's been doing well enough. And I think especially when I release book 3 in June, that's going to help. That always helps the Amazon algorithm when you keep releasing books in the same series. So that'll get the books up even more, but they're doing well enough that I am pretty sure I'm going to be able to continue the series and finish it at this point. So unless like something major happens, I should be able to.
No, and I'm really enjoying the series a lot. And I think Probably, I wonder if there was a business decision involved too with making these standalone, but also interconnected, where, yeah, so like readers can jump in at any point, like what you were saying earlier. And so I got my piratey, mermaidy fix with this bad boy.
Yes.
And so,
yeah, that was absolutely a business decision on my part. Oh, look at it. So pretty. I love it. Yeah, it was a total business decision because a lot of fantasy books are like series where they continue the same story and the same character. I did not want to do that for my first fantasy romance series. Because like my first one, I want it to be interconnected, standalone, so people can jump in at any point, and then hopefully it will make them go back. Like they'll like whatever book they jumped in at enough that they'll go back and they'll read the other books. Like that's my hope. So that was absolutely a business decision for me. I did that on purpose because I didn't want to have to I knew it would give me a better chance to not have to abandon the series. Because, yeah, you can't bring readers in at book 2 or book 3 if they have to have read, it's a lot harder. So that was. For future series, it probably won't. I don't know if I'll do interconnected standalones again. I mean, I've loved it. It's just really hard to try and have this overarching plot that's connected, but also all these separate stories and plots. It's hard to do that, but not that it's not hard to do the other thing. It's hard no matter what,
no.
but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine that it would be, but I feel like it is pretty seamless from what I've been reading in terms of there are these different Easter eggs for different fairy tales in, Ship of Shadows. And I think that was a really great idea. Brilliant, actually, and makes sense, especially given what you were talking about earlier with readers wanting, and I have seen that too, a complete series first.
And I get it. I get it because I'm that too. I'm there's only 2 books out. I got burned by Patrick Rothfuss. I don't know if you ever read. He wrote this super popular series called The Kingkiller Chronicles, and I had just come off of George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones.
Oh.
So I was this was way back in 2011 or something, and I had just
been where's the last book?
I had just read that last book, and I was so upset because I was well, when's now the next book isn't going to come for 10 years, and I'm just left hanging, and I don't know what's going to happen. So I was really upset, and I had a friend who was start The Kingkiller Chronicles by Patrick Rothfuss. He's promised that he's going to release 1 book a year, and there's already 2 books out. So the 3rd book is going to come out next year. And I was okay, I can do that. So I started The Kingkiller Chronicles, fell in love. These books are so good. They're high fantasy. It's not fantasy romance. It's high fantasy, kind of Game of Thrones type thing. But oh my God, it's so good. I devoured these books. I've read them. I can't even tell you how many times I've read these books over the years. That was in 2012. The 3rd book is still not out. 12 years ago.
Woof.
Yeah. And I've just been waiting, and I'm I've given up. The 3rd book is never coming. I mean, no, I love Patrick. I don't mean to talk. I'm not trying to say anything bad about Patrick Rothfuss. I love him and I love his books, but I'm saying I get where readers are coming from. Is that fear that you're going to start a series and love it and it's not going to be finished. I get it, but at the same time, you have to read the books and buy the books to support the author so they can continue, especially indie authors, so they can continue writing their books.
Yeah. And I have so much compassion for authors on that. And the pressure, to keep writing and keep the story fresh and the plot developing and the characters developing. And do you find that the writing kind of moves through you, or are you more of a writer that it does take a little bit more effort? I know that there are different types, right? Where it's some moments where the flow is there, right? Or other moments maybe where there's more blockage happening. But
knock on wood, I've never had writer's block. Really, the only time I had it was when I was pregnant with my daughter. For whatever reason, I just could not write during that pregnancy. I tried. That's the only time in my life that I just couldn't write, was when I was pregnant with my daughter. But that was it. Other than that, I writing is pretty seamless for me. It's pretty easy. Once I get an idea that I really like, I pretty much just, I think and think and think about it. And the more I think about it, the more details of the plot come to me. And pretty soon it's fully formed. And then I'm okay, I'm ready to type out the outline and use my, and then I can just start drafting. Yeah, I don't know. I'm lucky in that way. I know everyone's different, and I know it's not the same for everyone. But I do think because, like, I keep going back to the Clifton strengths, but I think because, like, achiever and focus and discipline are high, I think that probably has to do with why, like, writing is just easier for me. And it's just, even if I don't want to write that day and I'm like, I really don't want to write today, I'm not feeling it, I'll just sit down and do it, and I can. And it just
Wow.
happens. But I think that's what happens with, like, the discipline and the focus. It just comes together to be like, yeah, you're gonna sit down and write because you have to meet this goal. So it is what it is.
You know, and that's so interesting to me because when I think of creativity, you know, I don't know if I necessarily see it going with some of those other characteristics, but your books are so creative. Like, to be able to wake up one day and be like, I don't really feel like writing, but I'm going to write this hugely creative novel or book, whatever. I That's amazing.
Oh, thanks. Well, I think,
You know what
yeah,
I'm
I think,
saying?
like, it also comes back to viewing it as a business too, though. Like, it's not just a creative endeavor for me. You know, for some writers, it, like, totally is, and it's not a business. Like, it's not about making money or whatever. It has to be about both for me, because, like, I have to be able to. I can't. I don't want to go back to teaching, and I don't want to. You know, this is what I love to do, and so, like, I do also have to think about, like, the business side of it. And it's like, if I want to keep this as my career, and, like, once my kids are in school, if I want to be able to stay home and do this full time and keep writing, then, like, I do have to set these goals and I have to reach them, and I do have to have discipline with this. So I can't just view it as a creative thing. I would love to. I think that's, like, very romantic and fun, and, you know, but yeah, it has to be.
That's not the
Yeah, it's not
reality,
the reality.
you know?
It has to be. And I know maybe that can take some of, like, the luster out of it for readers or whatever, but, like, it does have to be a business thing for me too, as well as a creative thing. And so, like, even if I don't want to write that day, some people don't want to go to work. You know, it's like, I don't feel like getting out of bed and going to work today, but it's like, you have to. You have to have a living for your family, and you have to pay the bills. And so that's kind of, like, where I think of it, basically.
Absolutely. That makes total sense. And I don't think it takes the luster out of it at all for readers because your books are so creative. What do you love most about writing, T?
I just think I love that it's an escape. Like, reading has always been, like, my biggest passion since I was little. That's my favorite thing to do. I was, like, the reader of the family. My siblings are not big readers or anything like that, but I always was. And so to me, it's just always been an escape. And I love getting to provide that escape for, like, other people. To, like, it's always just such a compliment to me when, you know, when readers reach out to me, tell me how much they love my books, how much they love my characters. I don't know, it's just all so amazing, like, knowing that, like, I'm doing for readers what books have, like, done for me throughout my life, and providing that, like, amazing escape where you can just go into another world and, like, forget the worries and the problems and whatever you have in your current life. Like, that's what books always did for me. And so, yeah, I think that's just my favorite thing. And I think writing is an escape for me too. Like, it also helps me escape, you know, whatever's going on in my life. And so I love that too about it. But I just really love getting to, like, do that for other people.
Oh, I love that so much. Makes me want to tear up because it's the reality of, like, being a reader, you know, and being able to escape into these different worlds and fall in love with these characters. That's why I read, you know, and my day job can be very stressful and hard. And so when I'm at home in the evenings, kids are in bed, that's a lot of times when I'm reading. Or if I have, like, a morning off, I'll be drinking my coffee and reading. Um, yeah. So I hope that you can continue to write and share your passion with the
Thank
world
you.
because you're so talented, T, and I have loved these books.
Thank
And
you.
definitely here's a plug for you, but you guys go check out Mirror of Malice on Amazon or wherever, or your
Amazon
website.
works,
Or
yeah.
anything else that you want to share with your readers, maybe?
Um,
Let's put you on the
I don't
spot.
know. Yeah, just, I don't know. If you've read my books, you can always reach out to me. Like, I love hearing from readers. So, like, Instagram, email, website, like, you can always just reach out to me and tell me what you thought of my books or whatever. I mean, I just love hearing from readers. So don't be shy. I'm extroverted. I'll talk to you.
I love it. Actually, I did have one last question and then we'll start to wrap up. But out of all of your books, who would you say would be your book boyfriend
Oh, man.
or your characters?
Probably Pen from Mirror of Malice. I feel like I'm just, I like the grumpy a little better. Like Locke is so sunshiny, and I feel like it's too sunshiny for me. Like I'm like, that's too happy. That's too, like, you need to be more grumpy. Bastion's too secretive, so I think I would just can't trust that. But Pen, I really love Pen. So I think he'd be like my ultimate book boyfriend.
Yeah, this has been so much fun.
I know. Thank you for inviting me on. I really appreciate it. I've loved talking with you.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to my second podcast and interview with T. Harlowe, author of the Stolen Crown series. I had so much fun talking with her, and I learned a ton about her writing process, her publishing journey as an indie author, her upcoming book, Tower of Tempest, and her mutual love for Kansas City. I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I did. You can find her books on her website or Amazon. Or, hey, if you're local, you can find her signed books at The Pretty Posy and OP like I did. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to leave a 5-star review, like, and subscribe. That really does help a ton. I'm so honored to talk with these amazing authors and to share their stories with you and to connect with authors whose fanciful writing makes my heart sing. I'm having so much fun. This has been such a joy, and I'm so thankful you are along for the ride with me. Also, I wanted to add a quick fact check like I did in last episode. In this episode, T discussed the Enneagram as a tool to help develop her characters and their character arcs, which I think is absolutely brilliant. I am not an expert on the Enneagram. I have not received in-depth training in it. I find it to be a very helpful tool, but again, I have very rudimentary knowledge about it. So I did want to share a couple of things. The Enneagram is comprised of 9 personality types. Types 8, 9, and 1 are the gut triad, and they primarily are impacted by their anger, rage, and they tend to respond to gut feelings or physical sensations. The heart triad, which are the types 2, 3, and 4, are unified by natural subconscious shame, and they tend to respond to the moods and feelings of themselves and others. So I was wrong about type 2, 3, and 4. They tend to experience shame and sadness. And then the head triad, they are types 5, 6, and 7, and they tend to be more fearful or insecure. So I just wanted to clarify that because I did not communicate that well in the episode and wanted to clarify. But again, I am not an expert. If you're super interested in this, which I think is fascinating, check it out, look it up online. So yeah, thanks everybody for listening, and I'm so excited for the next episode to come out.